Okay, good evening, everybody. So it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Mr. Rajendra Bhattarai, who likes to be called Raj. And Raj received his BTech in civil engineering from IIT Kanpur, so he's our very own alumnus. And then subsequently, he did his master's in environmental health engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. He has more than 40 years of experience in the field of water, and of which around 35 years is at Austin Water. And he's currently the president of Clean Water Strategies in Austin, Texas, and also a fellow of the Water Environment Foundation. Federation, sorry. Raj is a recipient of numerous awards, including the Distinguished Alumnus Award from our very own institute. I welcome Mr. Raj. And today his talk is going to be about water sustainability in the backdrop of climate change. So over to you. Very warm welcome from IIT Kanpur and Sustainable Energy Department.
I think we are using this room for the first formal talk.
Wow, I'm honored. Thank you.
Can you switch off the light? Right.
Raj, you have a pointer. Switch it.
I'll use the pointer from here, so that way the remote people can also see
so
that.
we can.
So let me just do that.
Yeah.
I think I can do that. Sorry. Oops. How do I go back? Let's do this. Can you do the right click?
Try.
Yeah, and then
Point
options,
yes.
and you get the layer point. Yeah,
Perfect.
that
Do you want to change the slides using this?
No, I'd like to move around, but with this pointer, I think would be easier for them to see.
Okay.
So I'll use this. I like to move around when I talk, but here today, if you'll forgive me, because since I'm speaking to a remote audience, so
that mic also, that if you want to use it.
yeah, this should be fine. Plus, I'm a loud mouth. I think everybody can hear me. Everybody can hear me, right? Okay. So it's thank you very much, Akash, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really honored and grateful to be part of the Chandrakanta Kesavan lecture series. IIT Kanpur was my home for 5 years, from 1971 to 76. So even when I come back, I feel like I've come home. So in the US, there is a saying, people say you can never go home again. That is to say, what they're saying by that is you cannot get your youth or childhood back. But in my case, I feel like every time I come to IIT Kanpur, I get my youth back. And especially with our reunion coming up next week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, when all of us who are in our late 60s and early 70s will turn into 16, 17, 18-year-olds. So it is a great honor for me to be speaking to you here. And the topic of my presentation is, of course, the Austin's 100-year water plan, resilient, reliable, and sustainable to address the effects of climate change. So first of all, I thank all of you for coming and sacrificing your late afternoon nap. It's a no mean achievement. So I hope I will not put you to sleep. I remember the very first class I taught in the US was in the afternoon at 1:30. And the professor I was filling in for, he had given a brutal homework. So most of the students had stayed up all night finishing the homework. Then after the big lunch, they came, sat. So I found at the very back, one student fell asleep. And so I asked his friend right sitting next to him, said, hey, do you mind waking your friend up? And he said, why should I? You put him to sleep, you wake him up. So that really hurt me. So when I talk, I don't allow anybody to sleep. I'll do my song and dance and keep you, hopefully I'll keep you entertained. But for those attending remotely, there's not much I can do. You can get the nap out of the way if you want, but hopefully not. So anyway, with that little bit of lighthearted start, let's begin. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the help from 3 of my former colleagues at Austin Water. Marisa Flores Gonzalez, Teresa Lutz, and Robert Stefani. They did a lot of work and, of course, helped me with this presentation also. And, of course, and Richard Hoffpower, who is a hydrologist with Hoffpower Consulting. He was also very instrumental in handling a lot of the tremendous amount of hydrologic data. So their work should not go unrecognized. So just to give you an idea of where Austin is in the southern part of the US. It's the capital of Texas. It's the 10th largest city in the US, the population of just over about 1 million. The metro area is. Oh, it's this thing. Maybe we can move.
Yeah. Yeah, I think much better.
Sorry. Oh, yes, sir. Okay. You think? Oh, maybe the project. Oh, all right. No problem. You all can hear me all right, right? So the metro area population is about 2.4 million, and Austin is really one of the most desirable places to live in the US. A lot of young people like to take a job. People say, I'll take a pay cut to go live in Austin. In fact, that's what I did. I studied at University of Texas at Austin. I took a big pay cut and chose to live in Austin because I like the city so much. And because a lot of people are moving in, it is one of the fastest growing cities in the US, large cities. About 180 new people move in every day. That presents a lot of challenge to the water utility. I worked for the water utility for almost 35 years. We have to make sure all those people get water. Not only should they get water, they should get the wastewater service also. The wastewater has to be taken away. So we get them coming and going. And it's a city-owned utility. The water, both the water and wastewater, the city of Austin owns that. The citizens are very proud of being the owner of, like they own the hospital, they own the airport. In a lot of other cities, those are all private. But in Austin, the electric utility is city-owned. So the citizens of Austin is very rightfully proud of municipal ownership, public ownership of these facilities. Of course, Austin, as I said, is the capital of Texas. And then the home of the University of Texas, Austin, very large university, about 52,000 students, big research and instruction university. They have really one of the finest environmental engineering program, probably the ranked third in graduate program in environmental engineering. And they also have an excellent program in energy. I have a good friend, Michael Weber. We forgot to bring the books, Anita. Michael Weber's books. That's all right. That is my gift to the library here at IIT Kanpur. 2 books my good friend Michael Weber from the mechanical engineering department wrote. He's a mechanical engineer, but works with energy, but he works mostly at the intersection of water and energy, the water energy nexus. So he and I have collaborated on several projects, done short courses together. And since I'm short, I'm eminently qualified to teach in a short course. So anyway, he's written a couple of books. One is called Thirst for Power. And the other is Power Trip, the story of energy. And wonderful book, for not too technical, but anybody with high school education can understand that. Good informative thing for layperson. He wants to popularize a lot of science, a great science popularizer, a great lecturer. And I'm trying to see if we can bring him here for a short-term work here. Anyway, so with that, let's move. So Austin Water, I already said this is municipally owned. We provide both drinking water and wastewater service. And Lake Travis, the large lake here, is the largest in the chain of lakes. And then this is Lake Austin downstream. They're on the Colorado River. Now, this is not the Colorado River, the large Colorado River that forms the Grand Canyon in Arizona and California. Anyway, this is a different Colorado. This is a Texas version of this is Little Colorado. It begins and ends in Texas, or the Texas coast. So we serve about a little more than 1 million people. Practically everyone in the city of Austin and some smaller communities just outside the immediate in the vicinity of the city of Austin. And our average water and wastewater bill is about $90 a month, of which about $40 approximately average is for drinking water and about 50 for wastewater. Wastewater is expensive to treat. I know that. I worked a lot in the field of wastewater. Yeah, go ahead.
When you mean $90 a month, it was per citizen bill or
Per family, per connection,
per
average, let's say per home, which is about three and a half people is the average household size. So for the average household, that's what it comes
So
to.
$30 a month per person as a ballpark. So I just divided by 3. Okay, so
Oh yeah, you could say that. Yeah, 30 for both water and wastewater. Yeah, this is a total bill, average water and wastewater.
I just link it to what kind of numbers are we talking in India, and I was trying to link it to that.
Yeah, and then basically, even in the utility, even though we're one utility, I worked on both sides, both on the drinking water and wastewater side. I had to keep really good track of my time so that when they paid me, because you're not supposed to mix the wastewater and the water account, because otherwise you could be hurting some customers. So whatever you spent, time I spent, I had to really quantify in my timesheet how much time I spent working on water issues, how much on wastewater. Sometimes they're combined, they're both. So I have to divide that equally. So that's what I had to do. So there's a big wall between the water and wastewater, even though they're together. When you do the accounting, it has to be very separate, because there are some people who are only water customers, some people who are only wastewater customers, some people, and most of them, majority of them are both water and wastewater customers. So you don't want to hurt anybody, a single person, by saying, okay, well, it's the same thing, just a few dollars here and there. No, because it'll add up. So we have to do it very separately. Anyway, so I talked about those lakes, and there is a series of lakes, Highland lakes on the Colorado River. There are 7 lakes, as you can see, and don't this is a kind of a busy picture. There are too many names, and main thing to remember is the largest lakes is the Lake Travis, the one picture I showed you earlier. This is the Lake Travis. This is the largest lake. And then the second largest lake is Lake Buchanan, the upstream lake. This is pretty close to Austin, and these 2 lakes, Lake Austin and Lady Bird Lake. Yeah, go ahead.
Here at the back.
Can you all hear me?
Is
This mic is not working well. Or I can use that mic otherwise. Is this better? Okay, good. Yeah, that gives me a little more freedom to move around also. So the main thing to remember is, this is the last lake that is in downtown Austin, Lady Bird Lake, Lake Austin. These 2 are practically in the city of Austin. The river flows right through the city, in the middle of the city. And then Lake Travis is slightly upstream, but part of it is sort of surrounded by Austin. And the other lakes are upstream. And these 2 lakes, Lake Buchanan and Lake Travis, are the larger lakes, and they're really the flood control and water supply reservoirs. So the other lakes are smaller, just pass-through lakes. The water level is pretty much fixed, whereas these 2 lakes, the water level can rise and fall depending on how much flow is coming in. And what is important to remember from this slide for you is those 2 lakes, the total storage volume of the water in that lake decides what we can do with the water from the lake. If there's plenty of storage, then people can use as much water, up to a certain limit, whatever their water rights are. Each city has a water right, some amount of right, and some you can purchase from the water supply. The river authority that manages the river, we can purchase, and the city of Austin did that. We have some historical water rights from the beginning, from 1915. And then we purchased by paying several $100 million. I remember that was the largest check I carried from the city of Austin to hand it to the Lower Colorado River Authority to purchase extra water rights. And then beyond that, we also have reserved some extra water for 300. I apologize, I have to talk in acre feet. US is the only country which still uses foot pound, and nobody else in the world does. And so So we're used to that, and I apologize. I've tried to use metric units here as much as possible, but there are certain things, acre feet, if I try to do, I mean, I remember that I can. Anyway, so up to 325,000 acre feet per year, we have the water rights, and beyond that, we have to start paying. And then beyond that, if you go to for a certain threshold, then all kinds of restrictions come in. And then if the storage, basically, you may have the water rights, but if there is no water in the river, then you can't eat the paper or drink the paper, right? So the papers might say you have the water right, but if the river is dry, then there's not much to do. Or if everybody wants to claim their water rights and there's no water to go around, then they have to start cutting down and say you will only get so much percentage of this water. And so that is the challenge we're facing now. With climate change, this is going to get even more and more pronounced. The droughts are going to be even more extreme. The wet weather, conditions will get even wetter, and the droughts are going to even drier, and the extreme cold and basically extreme events in both directions, hot and cold, wet and dry, everything is going to go to a more extreme, the climate change. And we're already seeing evidence of that. Austin's per capita water use, when I first went to the city of Austin to go to graduate school in 77, they used about 240 gallons per person per day, not 240 liters, 240 gallons per capita per day. And when I went to work for the city of Austin 7 years later in 1984, it was still little more than 200, about 210 gallons. Through conservation, it came down a little bit. And from 84 to now, in about 37, 38, 39 years, it has come down to about 120 to 125 gallons per person per day, not liters, mind you. So this is, in a way, it's shameful that we waste so much water over there. They call the US the land of plenty, but it's really, really terrible. So we need to do more. But this is what we're doing is a lot better than 240 that I saw when we started, but we still have a long way to go to measure to the international standards. Yes, go ahead.
So this is because the per household has more people. See, that one impact will be water will be used per family, or there will be some general use of water and there will be per person use of water.
Yeah.
Right. So some general use of water will be divided over the number of people who are there. Right? And but per person use will be per person. Right?
Yeah.
So is it, how much of this is because the number of people per household or that has gone up, and how much of this is through actual conservation?
I will tell you, the majority of the water is used for watering the grass outside.
Right.
Most of it. So they don't use, it's not that Americans drink that much water and then they have to go to the bathroom to flush every time. No, and it's not that they take more baths than us, or just they're about the same. We probably take more baths here because it's a hotter country, right? But most of the water, because there the same drinking water is used for watering the lawns outside. Now, all this started because in England, they used to have these emerald green lawns outside their homes, which is okay. In England, you get a lot of rain, so it's okay. You don't have to irrigate that much. But somehow they brought that idea of a big, nice green lawn is essential for a home. That is not right in a place like Texas or in the Western US where there's a lot of drought. But somehow that's really difficult for people to change. So we need a cultural shift in people's way of thinking. That's very, very difficult to do. Very difficult to change people's mindset, as you'll see later. I'll talk about that. Yes, sir. I'm
And it has got that vibe, Kanpur. So you all bungalows, we have the lawns.
No, don't get me wrong. I like the lawns, and because the green space is good. That's why the campus is cooler when you walk through the gate from the outside the concrete jungle, especially in the summer. The temperature goes down 5, 6, 7 degrees lower. It's much more pleasant here. The air is cleaner and all that. So don't get me wrong. I love the green lawn, but at what cost? So we need to decide. Exactly. Yes, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. You'll see ultimately that's where we want to be. We want to use non-drinking water for non-drinking water purposes. Right now, we're using drinking water for non-drinking water purpose. So we want to have a gradual shift in that. And it's difficult to do, but I think over a period of time where the people are, if you're patient enough and take your time to explain things, they will understand. But changing the behavior is difficult. You know, I know I have difficulty changing my behavior, so that's per capita use. And so basically, per capita use has made a difference. It has reduced the water use, but this alone cannot solve our problem because our population is growing so fast. Right now, our uh, population is about a million, just over a million. In the next 100 years, by 2115, it's going to quadruple. It'll be 4 million. So where are we going to get the water for 4 million people? We're already being challenged in 2011 during the severe drought. So that's what happened in between 2011 and 13. There was really dry, hot year. The drought was very severe. And the drought, it's one thing about drought. Unlike other natural calamities like flood or fire or earthquakes, those things happen suddenly, and it's much more striking. It becomes news. Drought is very insidious. It works very slowly. It doesn't happen overnight. So it's not as dramatic. There are no, so it doesn't catch people's imagination. If there is a flood, it's very dramatic. If there's a fire, it's very dramatic. If there's an earthquake, it's very dramatic. It's sad. I'm not saying that we should overlook those, but drought, it's almost as insidious, but I mean it's as destructive. But it's because it's slow and it acts slowly. It's insidious. People don't pay that much attention. I mean, Australia went through a decade of brutal drought in the 2000s, and they spent billions of dollars on desalination plants. And then the drought broke, and people said, "Who are these idiots who spent these billions on this?" Somehow the water people became the bad guys there. So people have short memories. And so that's why educating the public is really, really important. So we want to popularize science. We want to educate people on the environmental issues, why it's important to conserve. And then that's what I'm trying to do. So how hot was, I mean, I talked about Austin. So how hot was Austin in 2011? We had a record 90 days of triple digit temperature above. This is again, I apologize, it's in Fahrenheit, not Celsius. On the summer, generally on an average, you get about 12 to 15 days of triple digit temperature in Austin. So, but in 2011, which was the hottest year, we had 90 days, means three months over that high temperature. And it was the driest 12-month period since Texas began keeping records 128 years ago. And there was record amount of flows coming into those 7 lakes I showed you, going into the Highland Lakes, which were basically our water supply. And there was record high electricity use. That's what really triggered the lake, the largest lake I showed you the picture of. That lake was down to about 1/3 of the capacity, almost 30%, 32, 33%, yeah. And so that really spooked out people. So they stopped watering their grass. So every day there was news, okay, please conserve water. And so most people let their lawns die. And then our model suggests that in the future, your maximum temperature, the number of days with more than 90-degree Fahrenheit temperature is going to increase. As you see, this is going to accelerate in the future. Right now we're getting about a little over 100 days with 90 degrees, above 90 degree, but now in the future it's going to accelerate more. It used to fluctuate here until this point. Now it's going to accelerate further because of climate change. So there's more evidence of climate change. So let me show you some of the pictures just quickly. This was during the drought in 2011. Same spot, exactly the same spot look at this is how full normally the lake is. When the drought broke with a flood in 2016, this is how full the lake should be, and this is how it was in 2011. Another picture, some part of the lake, it's sort of one branch of the lake, is completely gone. Now here is the same location in 2016. This is how it normally looks. This is how bad it was. It was spooky. It spooked a lot of people out. And this table is another evidence of how climate change is accelerating, how fast it is accelerating things, and how fast the records are being broken. So before the drought of 2008 and 16, that 8-year drought, which is now the drought of record for Texas and for Austin, the previous drought of record was in 1950. Back then, and so what I have in this table is the top 12 lowest years. In fact, I should probably say the bottom 12 because this is the lowest flow. But the report says top 12, so I just chose the same title. Flows coming into the Highland Lakes. So so top 12, number 12 is that was the last drought. And what we saw in 2011, look at the flow coming in that year was only 157, close to 158 million cubic meter. So which is almost 4 times less than that. So in about 60 years, the drought was 4 times more intense. So that is the effect of climate change. And another thing I want to pay attention to is out of these 12, look at the numbers in bold. There are 8. 8 of those are in bold. All those happened after 2006. So the climate change has been accelerating really fast. So from 2006, all the top 8 events, 8 out of the 12, the worst 12 events occurred after 2006. So, and this is going to accelerate even more the effects of climate change. That's what we have to be prepared for, to fight for. So I already talked about this. And so our modeling shows basically that the droughts that are worse than the 2007 to 16 drought are possible. And so because of that, we decided to do integrated water resources plan. This was after the brutal drought. The worst was 2000, even though it was from 2007 to 16, the peak was really in 2011, 12, and 13. So after that, the city basically created a task force on water resources. And they did a lot of work within very intense work in about 3-4 months. And they recommended that we do a full-blown integrated water resource plan. And because of the extreme drought, the growth and development, and the climate change impacts, and of course for the sustainability principles. And it had to be equitable, minimize the cost, and all those things. So based on that, in 2015, we started work in earnest for this, what we call this the water forward. That's our 100-year water plan. Now, generally, when you do water plans, people do for 5 years, 10 years. Majority of the plans are for 20 years. They look 20 years into the future. There are very few, a handful maybe go to 40. And it's very few, even a much smaller percentage, about 50 years. But it's very rarely, I think I know of one other city, I think in New Mexico, Albuquerque or somebody, or a small suburb of Albuquerque, they did a 100-year plan. And we are really one of the very few. We decided that the drought was so brutal that we felt we better shape up and we better start planning for the future, because a 10th largest city in the US cannot say, sorry, the last person to leave, turn the lights off and there's no water, everybody go home. You can't do that because that is home. So we have to supply water to people. And so the objectives, the 5 integrated water resource planning objectives align with the principle of sustainability. The triple bottom line we talk about: economic, social, and environmental benefits. The water supply benefits, economic benefits, societal benefits, implementation benefits, and environmental benefits. All of that together, so they align very well. So it's a quick overview. By the way, the report is available for anybody to download. We put it for public consumption. I'll give you the URL address, and it's a PDF, almost 500-page report, 494 or 95 pages. It has a lot more detail. So what I'm giving you is just tip of the iceberg, basically just the very tip of the very high-level overview of this. So we began by planning the objectives and the metrics. And the objectives basically had to be, and there are objectives and there are sub-objectives, and the objectives had to be distinctive to distinguish between one portfolio and another, what one objective and another. We don't want to confuse one or the, so they have to be very distinct, and they have to be measurable, so we can determine whether they are being achieved or not, whether through quantitative or qualitative metrics. And then they need to be non-redundant, because otherwise there will be some overlap and there will be bias. Sometimes intentional bias, sometimes unintentional bias. So when you have non-redundant objectives, that you avoid the bias. And then they have to be understandable, so they are clear and explainable to everybody, and they have to be concise to focus on what's most important. You can't just have a very fudgy kind of objective and sub-objective. So we start with the planning objectives and metrics, and then we look at the different options. How can we meet those objectives? So we come up with these hundreds of different screened options to meet those objectives. And then we assemble them into portfolio, just like your financial portfolio. You have so many stocks or so many bonds or whatever you put money in savings account, this and that. That's the financial portfolio. Here it's the basically water portfolio. It's a portfolio and the themes. Basically, you assemble those in different portfolios, and that is then evaluated against the water availability model that the state of Texas has developed for the lower Colorado River there, the river that supplies our water. So far, it's only the surface water. That was the sole source of water. We don't use any groundwater. The whole principle in Austin was people said, we should not be using groundwater because using groundwater is irresponsible. Because that is like withdrawing from a bank without putting any money there. So what took millions of years to be collected in the groundwater, we're going to pump it in 100 years, and then after that, what are we going to do? So the only way to use groundwater is if we can put water, good quality treated water, inject them in the ground through a injection well, and then through production well we can take that. So basically it's like a savings account. So whatever you put in, you can take that as part of what we call the rainy day fund, except in this case it's the non-rainy day fund. During the drought we take it out. During the rainy period, when we have plenty of water, when there's not as much water demand, when the water plant are running to full capacity, let's say, for example, in the wintertime, when people are not irrigating their grasses and the gardens, that's when there's excess water capacity available. During those times, you put the water in the ground, which is much better than putting water in the lake, because in the lakes, Texas is hot and dry. You lose about 20% of the water in the river, in the Colorado River, through evaporation. Whereas if you put it in the groundwater, in the aquifer, you can recover 95 to 98%, very little loss. And the water quality remains good. And so we're doing the study. Anyway, let me not get carried away. We'll get to that. And then we evaluate the hydrologic evaluation of all the portfolios along with other metrics.
One question. So
Yeah.
what would a portfolio look like? Is it different sources of water which are there?
Yeah, how do we meet the objectives? So in fact, yeah, that's a good question. So the initial portfolio themes, the portfolio is okay, is very broad initially. Minimize cost, maximize conservation, maximize reliability, maximize ease of implementation. It's very high level. And then you go into details. So with those, and then how do we do that? And maximize local control. So those are very high level thinking. And then from there, so these are the initial portfolios. And then how do we do that? And then you use your different options, combine those together, and to. So there are none of this was done just by rubbing our bellies, collective bellies in a meeting, but they were done rigorously through a lot of software. But a lot of the belly rubbing also went on, because that's important. That's how the meeting of the minds comes, okay? And you come up with a decision, but we let the software do the bulk of the work. So we use a lot of different software, and I'm coming to one, the decision software. It was called Criterium, not Criterion, RION, but this is RIUM. That's a trade name. It's a very powerful software that helped us with the metrics, and then it helped us rank the portfolios, because there were literally thousands of different portfolios. So it was difficult for us to keep track of those. And then we rank the portfolios, and then we do the uncertainty analysis again under different hydrologic conditions. And then from that, we come to the preferred strategy. If that doesn't work, then we go back iterative process. We keep going and until we come to a preferred strategy. So here's the development process. We began in 2015. So it was 3 years of very intense work. Initial lot of data gathering and meeting, and then because this requires participation and acceptance by the public. Without their acceptance, this would fail. If people say, I cannot pay for this, or I don't want to use less water, I still want to use 240 gallons of water per day, then it's doomed to fail, right? So we had to educate the public. So we had hundreds of meetings with the plenty of stakeholders, environmental groups, industry groups, businesses, political leaders, neighborhood groups, you name it, everybody. So hundreds and hundreds of meetings over nights and weekends and evenings, many sleepless hours. And so we had to educate them and then also get their input, see what they think. Can you live with this? Can you live with that? So that's sort of, there's a lot of back and forth, give and take going on. So we developed the methodology in 2016, and then the demand side options and then the supply side options, they were developed in 2017. In the summer of 2017, then the options were characterized, then developed the portfolio scoring that was done by Criterion Plus. And the plan was pretty much drafted by mid 2018. It was done by the fall, by August, September, it was done. In fact, I remember I retired. It was already done. I retired on the end of September 30, 2018. And you'll see 9 days later, they were waiting for me to retire, I think. And then 9 days later, they approved the plan. So, yes.
Would have developed, like there will be a lot of software, like use off the shelf software.
A lot of them were off the shelf, but a lot of this was for our database. We had to develop some of our own, but mostly they were off the shelf software. There are a lot of different softwares available.
And good. So if we go to that report that you mentioned,
you will find a lot more detail there. Yeah. Absolutely, it's all there. I didn't want to get into the weeds and yeah.
Even we want to teach some of this thing to our students, or maybe just understand for our own understanding also.
Yeah.
Like so, in terms of what are the limitations of some of the software? Each software has some limitations.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
No, that's why we had to tweak and do some of our own, because we found limitations in some of the software. So we did all that. Yeah.
So we can find that 5-page report.
Yes. Yeah, that provides pretty much a lot of detail. If you cannot find it, let me know and I'll try to find the answer for you. Yeah. So I'll just show like one sort of slide summarizing the results. So here, this is a key slide that's coming up. So to explain that, basically it will show 4 panels. When I showed one thing I forgot, remember those 7 lakes I showed? Guess when they were built? They were built right after the Great Depression. In 1929, the stock market crashed in the US. There was massive unemployment. And then in 1932, Franklin Roosevelt became president, and he pumped vast sums of money for public projects. So these dams were built from the early 30s until 1940. So when you build the dams and the reservoirs, it changed the hydrology completely, right? So we could not use any of the data before 1940, even though we had 45 years of older data. We couldn't use that because that changed the hydrology, the lakes and the dams. So we only had from 1940 to 2015, about 75, 76 years or 77 years worth of data. I think 2016 probably, yeah. And and then we are trying to project 100 years into the future. That's a little too ambitious. You only have 77 years of data, and you're trying to project 100 years into the future. We had a lot of skeptics even within our own department saying, come on, it's difficult to project what's going to happen in 5 years. Are you crazy? You want to project something, you're pushing it really to the extreme. But I like pushing the envelope, so to speak. See what happens, how far we can go. It's not that we know exactly what's going to happen 100 years from now. The technology might change, and there may be a lot of changes. But what we can do is we can use adaptive management practice. We can every few years we'll make mid-course correction and do that, but and tweak our path. Okay, so that's the whole idea, and you'll see that. So basically, for 77 years of data, this is the period of record hydrology without just the raw data. And then what we did was we on the right panel, on the panel on the top left, or top right, rather, the panel B, that is the climate change adjusted, the same data adjusted for climate change. And then at the bottom left panel, the C, panel C, what we did was we took that data, the 77 years of data, and used Markov chain Monte Carlo method to develop 10,000 years of data, because we knew that 77 years of data was not enough to give us this intense period of extreme wet or extreme dry. There just wasn't enough time.
10,000 years?
No, this is 10,000 years just generated randomly data. It's like we just made that up with Markov chain Monte Carlo. It just takes that and randomizes and puts resequences the thing. So I don't want to go into the Markov chain Monte Carlo, which is a very powerful tool. So when you have limited data, this is a good way to do it. And so basically it gave us 10,000 years of data. So then that gave us a little more confidence, saying, okay, now we're talking. Now it's like the equivalent of having 10,000 years of data from the past, and now we're going to project into the future. That's what we did. And so that was the record hydrology extended for that. And on the right panel at the bottom right, in panel D, is the extended period of record hydrology, but adjusted for climate change again. So the normal one is on the left, climate change adjusted on the right. So that's where this is really the key point I wanted to make. This is the key slide. And here is the result that you see. Well, there are global climate change models, the international models, and then they have developed one local for the state, and then we have one developed for our area, for this basin, the different. And we had a consultant. Hydrology, yes, exactly. How the climate change will affect the hydrology, how the climate change will affect the temperature. So based on that, we make all those other projections. So we had a special consultant, Catherine Heo. She's a very renowned climate scientist. She's a professor at Texas Tech University. Amazing woman, born in Canada. So she was our consultant. So she was the last word on climate change for us. And so whatever, she did the climate modeling. So we had to go to the expert, and so she was right there in Texas for us. We are very fortunate we have that. She's an amazing speaker, and again, another great popularizer for climate change. So here's the four panel. You can see A, B, C, D. On the left side, top left, the 77 years of record hydrology, and the right side, the same thing adjusted for climate change. And you can see for different years, 2020, 2040, 2070, 2115. So we have these are midpoints where we can make adjustments. Initially, now you'd see mostly blue. There's enough water in the river. And when you start seeing purple, that's when it's more than our 325,000 acre feet, or 400 million cubic meters. That's more than our water rights, historic water rights. That means we have to start paying for that. So the cost goes up. So the cost factor comes in. You can't just. And then the red is total storage in those two. Remember those two large lakes I talked to you about? So when the large lakes, when that is less than 740 million cubic meter, then all these conservation measures kick in. So your water supply will be curtailed. So that means we have to look for other sources of water. Even wherever it is purple or red, you have to look at alternate sources of water. So how do we become resilient? Is through diversity. See, right now, we only have one sole source of water, which is the surface water, the Colorado River. So how do we become resilient? Because if you just put all your eggs in that basket, and if that basket gets lost or gets broken, the eggs break, we're doomed. We don't have anything. So now we're going to use reclaimed water. We're going to use groundwater. We're even good. I mean, we are basically learning from Singapore. For Singapore, water is existential problem. Israel, for them, every drop of water is precious. So they even use the air conditioner condensate water. They will account for that. And that's what we are planning to do also. We've already started those processes. And we're also trying to reduce the demand by giving people smart meters, advanced metering infrastructure. So when people can see actually, otherwise the meter gets read once a month. And so it'll tell you this is how much water you use totally. But if people can see in real time how much water they're using, and from experience, we know when advanced metering infrastructure is given and people are given their data, they will cut down their water use. So that is starting. So all of that. So then we have to look for different alternative methods. So this is the thing about I already mentioned the adaptive management approach. Adaptive management meaning basically you go and you see how things are and then you make changes basically. So incremental changes periodically to get closer to our desired future. And then the whole plan will be updated every 5-year cycle. So the first one is coming up next year in 24. The work has already begun to update that. And then future updates, of course, to build on the work we do today and to learn from our actions how things will change. So as things change, we evolve and we change also. That's what adaptive management practice is. And so for the options moving forward, at the very top on the demand side is the advanced metering infrastructure. In fact, our neighborhood where my house is, they've already put that, and they put a big wooden pole with a microwave transmitter that collects all the information from our meters and transmits it to a central computer in the database. So my data will go there, and they're going to launch that very soon. And on the supply ops side, there's a whole list of things like brackish groundwater desalination, direct non-potable reuse, basically using reclaimed water, treated wastewater for directly for drinking, or indirect potable reuse. You put the wastewater discharge into a lake or a river, and then you pull it downstream. And somehow people like that. They think if you make a pipe-to-pipe connection, from the wastewater plant to the drinking water plant, people, they say that's toilet to tap. But if you put the same thing into a river and few hundred feet downstream, you take it from there. Somehow people think Mother Nature's purifying kiss is really, really wonderful. Even though our technology is really wonderful, we can do better than that. But somehow in people, that's psychology, people's psychology. They don't want to see the pipe connection. That's wastewater yick, So that's how people are. So depending on where we are, so we have plans for both direct and indirect potable reuse. And we're exploring other additional supply or off-channel reservoir, important category, and then many different options. And then, of course, the irrigation changes. That's the biggest massive change is going for irrigation. So we're telling people we will pay you money for you to get rid of your grass outside, because that'll save a lot of water. That's where most of the water use goes. So or put very drought resistant kind of plants outside instead of this grass, which consumes a lot of water. So there are many different options. I don't want to read through all this. You can get all this in the report. So here's the quick summary. In the future, the population and the green line, you can see the population is going to quadruple from 1 million to 4 million. The water per capita water use, the dash line at the bottom, that is about 120 to 225 now. It will come down to about 70 in about 100 years. So we are hoping that people will conserve and get a little better. 70 gallons per capita per day is still high, even 100 years into the future. But that's pretty ambitious. People think you're crazy. We'll never get down to that. Over my dead body. There are some people who say that. But there are others who say, no, this is good and we need to do more. Why are you being so loosey-goosey with this? We need to go down to 50 gallons per day. And there are others who say, no, let's go to 50 liters per day. And I said, hang on, let's go to 50 gallons first, then we can talk about going to 50 liters later. So it's all incremental. And finally, this one illustrates, we talked about earlier, the water being used. So here on this sort of a pie chart, the gray area is basically drinking water supply being used to meet non-drinking water demand. For example, using golf course irrigation or your lawn irrigation, you don't need drinking water for that. You can use non-drinking water. You can use wastewater effluent for that. So right now, look, almost half of our drinking water is used for that non-drinking water purpose. So in the future, there'll be only a small sliver, in 2021-15. And then the non-drinking water supply meeting the non-drinking water demand is very little right now. It's a very small percentage. In the future, it's going to be much larger. Okay, so only a small portion will be, and all this is the drinking water demand. So that'll continue to increase as the population increases, as there's more and more demand. So that's sort of the summary. So as I said, I retired from Austin Water on September 30, and 9 days later, I think they were waiting for me to get out, and the Water Forward Task Force approved this report. This is the report. You can see the PDF there. If you just Google Water Forward Austin, Texas, you will find it. In fact, I Googled it right here on my phone. It's the 500-page report is then on my phone already. So it's really easy. You don't have to write down everything, but it's here. And then very next day, there's a Citizen Advisory Commission, Water and Wastewater Commission. The City Council appoints them to advise the City Council. They're expert citizen members. They recommended that. And then a month and a half later, on 29 November, Austin City Council approved it. So in a way, 2018, but essentially 2019 it went into effect. So 5 years later, meaning 2024, early next year, we'll have a new the plan will be updated. So every 5 years, the plan is to update them. And there are major course corrections in the different set points, as I told you. And one of the first things so what's happening, one, I already talked about the advanced metering infrastructure, the smart meter, and now we're doing the aquifer storage and recovery. I told you there was tremendous opposition to use of any groundwater in Austin. We have never used it in our 115, 120-year history. There are some people who have private wells, just on their ground, they use for irrigating their large grounds and big compounds. Those are different. They have to get special permit for that. But publicly, we don't have any wells. So now we're changing that mindset. So we have to convince the people, think, yes, you're right. We agree with you. It's almost a sin to just continue to take the groundwater without any disregard for recharge. So what we'll do is we'll do a pilot first, and then the full-scale ASR. ASR is aquifer storage and recovery. The target is to have about 60,000 acre-feet. 74 million cubic meter per year of supply available by 2040. So in about 17 years, we should have that. And so we're in the first phase of the project for the ASR pilot. We're holding informational meeting, again, stakeholder input, because we need public input. That's really, really critical. And we have to have a public buy-in, because if we lose the public support, Janta Janardhan is what I always say. The public is they are supreme. We have to make them happy, because they are the ones who pay the bill, right? But without them, we'd be sunk. So we have to get them agree. Now, why do we do this? So here's my plea. We all know, everybody has seen this picture from Earth from space. 71% of the Earth is water. They say there's plenty of water. If we can desalinate, problem is solved. But that's just on the surface. What's the real volume of water? All the water in the world, all the water in the ocean, in the seas, in the rivers, lake, groundwater, atmospheric water, all of that is that large sphere you see, only 1,385 kilometers in diameter. That's all the water, folks. I checked the calculation. That is correct. That's the water in me and you and the tomato plant outside, the grass, lakes and ponds, the dogs and cats, all the water, that is all the water. That's only that water. And then I told you most of that is ocean water, but 97% is the ocean, salty water, right? So the fresh water is that other mid-sized sphere, 273 kilometers in diameter. That's all the water we have, fresh water. Okay? And then, but most of that fresh water is beyond our reach. It's so deep underground, we can access that economically. So the easy access is the fresh water, the surface water. That is that tiny little drop you can barely see. That's only 56 kilometers in diameter. That's all the water we have. For us, for our children, for our grandchildren, and for many future generations to come. So our challenge is to keep that water clean, to keep that water available, conserve it, not just for our use, but for the future generation. Thank you. Any question? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I'm a bit troubling you.
No, not at all. No, I love people asking questions. I would hate if you had fallen asleep.
So sorry for my limited geography, but Coral River comes from upstream, right? It is not originating in Texas, right? It is
Essentially in Texas. This is the Texas version of the Colorado.
oh,
The big Colorado originates in Colorado and then goes around Nevada, whatever, and then goes to California and to Arizona and then goes out.
so have you like so
This is a different one.
yeah, so
Yeah.
two questions around that.
Yeah.
The amount of water which will be available for in that river. Since the whole theory has been driven, so it still that kind of constitutes the biggest portion for you.
Yeah.
With respect to water availability.
Yeah, that is in the future. Basically, the core water supply will still be from the river.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So with that being in mind, what if some state, upstate from Austin, also decides to make some lakes? And US being a federal state, can Austin stop that? Right. So all the river which is flowing the downstream of the river.
This is all within Texas, though.
Yeah, this all is in Texas.
Yeah, it's with some other cities.
Some of the city upstream can also plan to make some lakes for their water conservation plan.
Excellent point. So we all have our water rights.
Right.
That's what those numbers, the purple and red, I showed you. So we have our water rights, and then we paid hundreds of millions of dollars for extra water rights, and then we paid even more money to get just the option so that we'll have if we need it in the future, we've reserved some capacity just in case. So we've done that, and so the others, they have to find some other ways. And so, but we're the ones. That's why we thought we need to do this planning. Otherwise, if everybody just takes the water and runs, then we'll be left with nothing.
And the second question is that when you did this assumption, you assumed some water flow in the river.
Yes.
Right. And so how are you accounting for potential climate changes?
The model does that.
That's
exactly, that's why we brought the climate scientist, Catherine Heo. That's where she came in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we wanted the best, and she is just absolutely amazing.
Thanks.
So we take her word. I'm not a climate scientist. I know just enough to be dangerous. No, but excellent question. You made a really good point. Yeah, yes, go ahead, back there.
So among the different strategies that you tried out, which would you say is the most efficient for conserving water?
The best thing is conservation. Best thing is to use less water. So if you see water conservation, I talked about my friend Michael Weber, who works at the intersection of water and energy. What happens if you conserve water? Because you need electricity, you need energy, you need electricity to pump and clean water. So you end up saving energy, and then you need water to generate energy, so you save water. So it's like a hall of mirrors with infinite reflection. So it can be a really beautiful, wonderful circle. Okay, but if you waste water, then you waste energy. That means you waste even more water, which even more energy. It's a kind of a really bad vicious circle. You can go down the drain, or you can climb out of that. So that's the strategy. And so those are the challenges. So the weakness in one sector will affect the other sector, but because they are so closely linked, that also gives us the opportunities. So how can we benefit? How can we make it more efficient? If we make one sector more efficient, it'll help the other sector, and vice versa. So that's the whole strategy. But the best thing is conserve water, use less water. So, and then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Was there an awareness campaign or something?
Oh, absolutely. The city does that. And the city gives, for example, the city gave a lot of people free toilets. In the US, when I first went there, when you flushed each time, it used to take 8 gallons of water. Now, when I flush, it's 1.2 gallons per flush. So the city basically bought thousands of toilets and gave it to people, if anybody who wants. Trust me, I installed a lot of those toilets in my home. I have 3 toilets, and I installed in many of my friends' homes too. Because I would say, hey, it's available, go get it. And they would advertise. They give you very high efficiency washing machines, high efficiency dishwashers, low flow shower heads, or low flow, the taps in the sinks. Putting aerators, and so that it feels like you're getting a lot of water, the volume of water, but it doesn't splash, but it cleans well. And so there are a lot of things they're doing. And then they're also saying, put plant grasses, which are very drought tolerant. Basically, use local grass. Don't use imported grass from England. They are water guzzlers. So the main thing is the best thing is conservation. But conservation alone cannot compensate for the fourfold growth in population. That's why we need to look for other sources. But for the biggest bang for the bucks, definitely conservation. Use less water. But not just water. Use less of everything. Be frugal. Don't buy things you don't need. Don't leave the light on if you don't need it, because there you're saving water. There's a lot of water, even in the slide projector, it's in a way, there's a lot of water behind this. Okay. Or the clothes I wear, the things I eat. People pile a lot of food on their plate, and then they take one bite and say, I don't like it. Kharab bekar hai, phenk do. There's a lot of water that goes out with that. So don't do that. When I eat, I don't even waste a single grain of rice. When you see my plate, it looks like it's been licked clean. And I'll almost do that. And that's very important. All of us need to think in that term, because everything has a water footprint, energy footprint, carbon footprint, you name it, everything. And so all of them are sort of linked together. And because of climate change, it's an existential crisis, folks. Without that, we're doomed. So we need to do our part. That's why I'm so passionate about that. Yes, go ahead.
Current water use about 120 gallons every day.
Yeah, I know it's ridiculous for me to preach conservation when we're using that much water there, but bear with me.
So what would be the best case scenario according to you, where the water can decrease up to from 120 gallons to what it can decrease for a family? If any prediction has been done.
Not per family, per person. I think the lifestyle that the US is using right now, that's not sustainable. I would say globally, I mean, and it's what is sad is we've told all the people who didn't have toilets, who didn't have running water system, they say, study well, make money, then you can be like us. You can have flush toilets in your home, and you can have showers and this and that. Now, all of a sudden, when these masses their lives have improved and they want to do that, we say, oh, it's not sustainable. You can't have that anymore. Sorry, the door is closed. So there is that dilemma. You have to keep that in mind. Okay. But in my opinion, globally, I think what is sustainable is probably not the more affluent countries in Europe or America is different. America is very wasteful. Let's say what people are doing in Greece. I think that kind of life is maybe sustainable. Okay. So maybe use 50, 60, 70 liters per person per day. I think that would be a good goal for all of us. That's why when I said 70 gallons per capita per day. So I mean, I'm the wrong poster boy to preach conservation, because we waste so much water. But in the country as a whole, I don't mean me personally. We try to be frugal. In fact, there is go ahead. I mean, sorry. So yes, sir.
Hi, thank you, Raj, for this piece of work, and the presentation was quite interesting. I'm faculty in SW department, Prabhu Bajpayee. So the model that you have discussed, so it's not a question that I was thinking that the climate change adjustments, that component you have considered. So that is a very thing which is not local, which can have a global impact or a bigger impact.
Absolutely.
So when you are considering it, like suppose we do something, a net zero activity in a city level or a national level, or we are talking a lot at various platforms in global level or as well. So when you are doing that adjustment, have you considered the local factors only, or surrounding factors on a bigger level and larger level also?
No, they started with the international climate model. Then they looked down on the US model. Then they looked at the Texas, and then they looked at this water basin on our local level. So it is sort of a cascade effect. So we've considered all of those. And there are many different scenarios we looked at. Like even for climate change, they say some rapid rise and a medium rise in temperature, all of those. So there is a wide band. That's why. And then you try to get the thing in the median there, but it could fluctuate. It could go either way. So because there are uncertainties. The farther you go into the future, the more uncertainty it's going to be. But as we go, we'll make adjustments and make that's what the whole adaptive management technique is.
The best thing is that your local administration has adopted it and
Yes,
accepted it.
Austin is very progressive. They were the first city in Texas. They've adopted have a net zero carbon emission by 2040. It's a very ambitious program. Yeah, in 17 years.
How do you look, like, as you mentioned, there are various other energy aspects other than the water.
Yeah.
So, this kind of model can be replicated to other energy aspects as well. If we think from the sustainability point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So, can we think it, or how do we modify or how do we replicate for other energy aspects? Factors?
Sure, because it's just a matter of understanding and modeling the system. Here we're trying to link with water, and so how much water. In fact, in the US, 3 to 5% of the energy is used by the water sector. But let me tell you something. That is nothing. A lot more energy than that is used by people to heat the water at home. But water has the highest specific heat. So if you want to conserve water, you'll save a lot of energy, and you save a lot water as well as energy in the process. But if you conserve hot water, you'll save a lot more energy and therefore a lot more water. So the same way you can connect anything. Everything has a water footprint. Everything has a carbon footprint. Everything has an energy footprint. Even the chemicals we use in treating water, they have a water footprint as well as a carbon footprint as an energy footprint. So I wanted to use some slides. I had so much ideas to talk about. There's a Richard Smalley, who was a Nobel laureate from Rice University. He developed my idea, and Michael Weber, and we all think alike. So he said this guy put the list of problems facing humanity. And the top is energy. If you have plentiful energy, then you will have plenty of water. Water is number 2 in that. And then number 2. And then after that, food. So basically you get rid of hunger. That makes a lot of difference. Then population, poverty, all of these will slowly disappear. One will cascade into the other. Terrorism, all of those, because they're all troubles because people don't have enough to eat or don't have enough water. So wars will start because there is shortage of water because of climate change. So if you want to avoid that, this is the time we really need to do something. That's my plea. That's where we need to the understanding and all the bright minds that you all have here, all of you. In fact, my friends there, Michael Weber included, they say, I would love to get a couple of bright IITians as my graduate students here. So they would love your application. Both, I don't want to do a commercial for them, but they would love a bright IITian to apply for their program.
One more point,
Yes.
Have you considered any resiliency matrix also while making this decision support to be resilient also?
Yeah, for resiliency, for example, the reclaimed water, the recycled water, that is fairly resilient. As long as there are people, if they're flushing, that's a lot more, because obviously, as long as there are people, they'll find water somewhere. And then when they drink and they eat, they have to flush. So the wastewater will be there. So the water coming from that is a lot more resilient than the river might. I mean, if the river completely dries up, then we're finished, but they'll get water from some other source, let's say groundwater or whatever reserve. And so there'll always be the way. So that one is more resilient. And so as I said in the beginning, the diversity is the key for resiliency. If you're more diverse. And that is true for an organization, for a society, in terms of such a monolithic, which we have different ideas and different minds, different sets of people from different backgrounds. And when you bring all those thoughts and ideas together, diverse ideas, you get a much robust, resilient system. And the same is true for water also. You try to get different sources of water. I guess they're telling me to stop. But frankly,
Thank you very much.
yeah, absolutely.
And congratulations for your work to be really implemented in your city.
Well, thank you, thank you. We're very fortunate that the city of Austin supports this kind of initiative. But I think the idea is, this may not apply. There may not be one-to-one correspondence, but there may be some ideas here that we can implement some other places also. And there is much more we can learn from each other. There's always that's what diversity of opinions and ideas. That's what it is. So, and I welcome any feedbacks from you all. I know IIT is we are it's the cream of the cream. The best minds are here. So I'm really truly honored and humbled to be here. So thank you again for the opportunity.
So thank you very much, Raj. Now I'd just like to invite Professor Devapam Das and to hand over a small token of appreciation on behalf of our department. I can't get it over there.
Nice shot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope it made some sense. Not all hot air, right?
There is one last thing
Yeah.
for you, Raj. You can sit. I'll just show it on the screen. Where is it? It's hiding somewhere. Okay. वो वाला कहाँ है हमारा? Is it? हाँ,
Thank you. Nobody asked.
Will anybody accept?
I'm sorry?
Will anybody accept it?
People are pretty bold. Say yes. Yeah. They want to send a message to me.
So finally, on behalf of our department, we are planting one tree in the name of Raj, and it's from a partner organization called 14 Trees. So they have this philosophy that each person's carbon footprint can be sequestered by 14 trees. So that is their name. And we are planting one tree, which is an Amla tree, which is planted today on your name. So I will share the slide with you, and you can track the growth and progress of this tree, and you can offset your own carbon emissions. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Really moved by this. This is